All right, welcome to all the viewers out there to this afternoon's Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout with the International Society of Fire Service Instructors. I'm one of your hosts, Brad French. I'm a lieutenant in Dayton, Ohio, and on the board of directors for the ISFSI. Joined by my esteemed co-host, Aaron Heller from Franklin Township, New Jersey, and I'll kick it over to. I'm sorry, I can't speak today. Aaron, kick it over to you, brother, for a little intro.
All right, hi, folks. I'm Aaron Heller. I'm actually from Hamilton Township, New Jersey.
Sorry.
A little south of Franklin. That's okay. But yeah, I'm captain in Hamilton Township and an instructor with FDIC and some other stuff. So I'm happy to be here today. We've got a really important topic to go over, and a group of guys who've been there and done that. So it's going to be a good hour.
All right, so as you've seen by tuning in, we're going to talk live fire training today, all kinds of different aspects we could kind of take this conversation. As fire instructors, it's something that's very important to us to try to create as realistic of an environment as we can, and as Aaron said, a lot to talk about. We could easily fill an hour with this. In fact, we could probably talk all day about this. But before we get to that, I'm going to kick it over to Chief Bobby Halton, our friend and mentor, and let him talk about what's coming up in a mere 48 days, right, Chief?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad. And mentor, I don't know so much about, but friend, absolutely. So thank you for having me on again today. Yeah, we're 45 days out, 46 days out. Which one is it, Brad? 45?
The countdown says 48. I don't know. I don't know if that's on or not.
No, that's accurate. It would be 48 if you're attending. For me, it's more like 38, but that's a different story. But thank you so much. FDIC is filling up fast. There's a lot of hot classes. Please go to the website that have filled up. Unfortunately, we only have so many slots. We're going to probably run about 6,000 firefighters a day through the hands-on training. Right now, we've got about 4,700, maybe 5,000 plus now signed up. So please, there's plenty of room open and some great classes, and there's always that little fudge factor. I can always contact an instructor if I have to. If you absolutely, positively got to have that class, we'll do what we can for you. But there's a couple of classes that I want to talk about real quickly, and one of them is the bailout class. Still has some spots left in it, and I want to tell you, Jason Hubbleman's group does that bailout class, and it's probably the best FDIC training program that I have seen put together in a long time of the new class. And all the classes are great, but even John O'Connell, who I think is the best man in corduroy and blue jeans on the fire ground today, has said that that's one of the most amazing classes for how well it's run and put together. There's not a minute of downtime that you're not doing something. The instructors are top shelf. So if you're looking for a good 4-hour training program for something that's critically important everywhere, I don't care where you are. Think about the guys in Toronto. Think about the Black Sunday fire. Think about, the list goes on and on and on, where good firefighters have had to bail out, whether it's a residential 2-story or whether it's a 3-story walk-up or whether it's a 6-story brownstone. These fires, fire behavior, as much as we've learned, as much as we understand about it today, it is still dynamically complex, and things can go wrong quickly. And when they do, a window fails or whatever, the ability to bail out correctly and appropriately and safely is critical to your survival. So please look at that. Dan Majikowski still has, and the NIST folks still have some room left in their workshop where they'll be talking about the results from last year's class. Incredible class on learning from human error by one of the students of Dr. Sidney Decker. Probably the most important course you will ever take in your career. It's understanding human error. It's an unbelievable opportunity to learn from a man who has studied from the best of the best and who's a recognized world expert in his own right. So the workshops have classes in there. I could go on for days and days about them, the classroom stuff. Please sign up for the fun run. Really looking to get fun run/walk. Amazing opportunity. 5K walk, 5K run. Usually get about 1,000 people. We'd love to break the 2,000 mark. Please sign up for that. The stair climb, supporting the NFFF. Hey, huge deal. We're coming up on the 15th anniversary. It's a hugely important deal to me and to a lot of other people. Please sign up. Even if you can't complete the climb, give it your best shot, or show up, or just or just buy the T-shirt and give the NFFF your $25. I mean, it's a big deal to me, and I'd really like to see people do it. Stop, Drop, Rock, and Roll should be fantastic. The Fool's Bash is going to be indoors. They got an ice skating rink this year that they're going to move it, so it's going to be right outside the convention center. Should be amazing. Just some really, really cool stuff, and I can't tell you how exciting it is. Registration is way up, so going to be an amazing amount of people here, probably going to top 35,000. Just the way it's going right now, it's tracking really about 20% up over last year. So just some amazing, amazing stuff going on. Can't tell you how excited we are about some of the fantastic things. Some really huge announcements that are going to be made. Some incredible stuff that's going to happen in 2017, which is going to just blow you away. I mean, absolutely blow you away. Unbelievably going to blow you away. And we can't say it till we get there, but we've got some big, big announcements to make at the show. So hopefully you'll be there. And if you can't make it, remember it's going to be streamed live. So if you can't get there due to shifts, or it's not your turn this year, or just had a baby, or life happens, man. We get it. So if you can't be there, you can't be there. But FDIC, I'm so honored to just be a small part of it and be able to attend and to participate in a small way. But it's really the fire services show, and it's like UN for the fire service. It doesn't matter what group you belong to. It doesn't matter what ideology you have, whether you're a fire marshal or an instructor or a member of the black professional or Hispanic firefighters or women in the fire service. We all come there together. It's our show. It's your show. We're not voting on anything. We're not pushing any agenda. We're not running. No candidate has our ear. And by the way, I didn't do too good in the primaries yesterday, so I'm probably going to be suspending my campaign for president. And I got beat in Texas.
We'll write you in.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. I wouldn't pass the background check, but because in my generation we inhaled and we enjoyed it. But
that's only because you didn't wear air packs as much.
Yeah, right, yeah. So anyway, FDIC is coming. Try to get there. We'd love to see you. Please take advantage of the special events, the comedy night, Stop, Drop, Rock, and Roll, the Fool's Bash, the Union Night, the Fun Run, all kinds of stuff going on. Super, super, super stuff, and that's all I'll say about that. I apologize for rambling on, but you get me going about that show, I just can't contain myself. And if you want to ask any questions of us today, I've got my Twitter on. Remember, it's hashtag FETalk. That's hashtag FETalk. I'll be watching Twitter, and I'll get your questions in to Aaron and Brian and all these experts we have, and let's talk about 1403.
All right, thanks, Chief. I certainly agree that I think we're all just as enthusiastic as you are about FDIC coming up. I think we're getting a little bit of echo. Maybe muted on your end, speakers. We still getting some echo? We can. I think we just lost it. There we go. I think we're good, Chief. So anyway, what we'll do now is kind of get into the topic at hand. We've got some fantastic guests today. Brian Kazmierzak from Indiana and Brian Ward from Georgia. Brian Ward is having some audio difficulties, so I don't know that we're going to be able to connect with him or not, but we'll give it a shot. Maybe some miracle happen and he's going to be able to talk. But we'll start with Brian Kazmierzak.
Brad, before you go any further, didn't
yes,
that
sir.
Brian Kazmierzak guy just win some kind of contest? Wasn't he running for Grand Imperial Royal head of the Royal Buffalo Association? What was it?
I was lucky enough to be elected as the second vice president to the ISFSI. So thanks for everybody that supported me, and I've been on the board for a couple of years now, and was lucky enough to get involved with the ISFSI after I'd won the Post Award from you guys a couple of years ago, and it's a fantastic organization doing fantastic stuff. So thanks, Bobby.
Oh, God bless you, man. We couldn't be prouder of you.
Just, I guess, Brad, you just want me to introduce myself and kind of go from there?
Go for it, brother.
My name is Brian Kazmierzak. I have the honor of being a battalion chief with the Penn Township Fire Department in Mishawaka, Indiana. I've been in the fire service for about 25 years, 20 of those on the career side. Run the website modernfirebehavior.com, and then also run the day-to-day operations for Billy Goldfeder on firefighterclosecalls.com. Got involved with live fire training probably back in about 1997, 1998, doing all the wrong things. Definitely had a couple close calls myself, including one using diesel fuel. So I can say that, you know, I've done the stupid stuff. I've been there and had those bad experiences. And as part of my EFO program, I was required to obviously do a research paper, and my last research paper was in live fire training. Bobby was so kind as to publish most of that research paper as my first ever published article in fire engineering. And since then, it has been a passion. Matter of fact, I did live fire training this morning with dollhouses. We were doing the dollhouse burns and doing some tick stuff in our training facility this morning, and devised a couple props for the tick stuff, and did that today. So, you know, just as even in the snow in northern Indiana this morning, we were doing live fire stuff at our training facility. So, you know, what scares me is NFPA 1403 has been around since 1986, and we've had 16 firefighters killed in live fire training since 1986. So we've had a standard that says how to do it right, but we know, and who knows how many injured. Or how many sets of rune turnout gear or whatever else. So that's, I guess, the part that scares me about this is we have a standard. It's a good standard. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There's nothing out there that's perfect. But it gives us a place to start, and we still have trouble figuring that out in the fire service. So, you know, I think we need to concentrate on the standard and, you know, the proper way of doing it, and stop thinking about making things hotter, bigger, and better. Because if you think as the fire service, we like things that are hotter, bigger, and better. And that's not necessarily the case. And if you think of all the times we've got ourselves in trouble, whether it's atomizing fuel in a garden sprayer or throwing an extra foam mattress on top of the fire, those are, or locking guys in a school bus that's been modified for live fire training, those are the things that have got us in trouble. So there you go.
All right, fantastic. We'll see if we can toss it to Brian Ward. Brian, say something. See if anything comes through, brother. All right. No luck. We've been trying to get Brian's audio figured out down there, but no such luck. Brian Ward is a tremendous guy. He's been heavily involved in the International Society of Fire Service Instructors. Has done a lot of work for our organization through our live fire credentialing program, instructor at FDIC, just a tremendous guy, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to hear his insight today. It doesn't seem like. So Kaz, we'll be popping back to you probably a little bit more often. So Brian Ward, we'll catch you. We'll have to catch you another time, brother. I'm sorry it's not working out on the audio end. So let's get into some questions. So we'll just kind of run down the line, and everybody can kind of chime their 2 cents in. The first thing I had written down is, as an instructor, what is your biggest challenge in conducting live fire training, and how do you work to overcome it? Whether that be an issue with having all the appropriate positions staffed, or an issue that we all talk about, which is the realism issue, and how we're, you know, getting the closest we can to real life conditions, and yet at the same time following NFPA 1403 and operating within the ethical and the legal confines of that. So what is your biggest challenge as an instructor when it comes to conducting live fire training from an instructor perspective? Aaron? You're still muted, brother.
All right, we back? Better?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know that there's simply one or two at the top. There's several at the top that all tie into one another. What I've found is, yeah, we can do some live burns. We can do them at the approved training facilities. Here in the state of New Jersey, they're very, very strict on what we can and can't do anymore, and facilities are inspected by the Division of Fire Safety, and reports are given on those. And that's simply because, you know, we are the ones who had the school bus that was modified, and we are the ones who have had lots of these problems. Unfortunately, I think that we are still paying for the sins of a generation or 2 generations ago. And that becomes a problem because our hands do get tied. You know, there's that thought process, are we better off with engineered buildings than acquired? Yes, because they're safer, we have safety features, we have all these other things. But Are we just training guys to burn in a concrete box or in a Connex box that's been adapted? Do we just use gas simulation equipment versus Class A combustibles? And then even the Class A combustibles, as we know today, pallets and straw or Excelsior are nowhere near what's burning on the inside of these residences and these businesses that we're going into. So how far we can take it and how close we can get it to realism is one of the biggest challenges. For me, working at the academy, and I'm not involved in a lot of the burns at the academy anymore, but when I was doing a lot of it there, they provided us the proper staffing. They budgeted properly. I know a lot of places around the country that's a real problem, and guys are taking shortcuts. We just did live burns for my side business down in Louisiana, and because we were doing burns, I brought in extra instructors, simply knowing that we've got to meet 1403, and from a liability standpoint on my own head, I'm not going to do it. And we want to be able to watch these students and make sure they get it right. So I think that it's that realism versus safety and where the line gets drawn. And obviously 1403 is a very important document. We follow it. We really are very strict with it when I go anywhere that I'm teaching, and I believe strongly in the document. But as any other document, and as I'm sure Brian can speak much more to than I can, it's probably time for some changes in it, some updates, and some modernization, so to speak. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Brian, let's go over to you. What are your thoughts on challenges, and also you can take that on into some background on 1403 and your thoughts on the document.
Okay, I think the challenge for me is I not only as I do it in my own fire department, but as I travel the country is the realism portion of it. You kind of mentioned that, but it's not the fact that we are burning in a concrete box so much. It's getting the people to realize the fact that we're. I guess it's the fact they think it's more of a simulation than it's the real deal. So they want to stand up. They don't want to necessarily go through all the same motions that they would on a regular fire scene. So it's adding that realization element to it, I think, is the best. The other is I'm a huge fan of acquired structure burns. I think we get so much more out of an acquired structure burn than we get out of a training facility. If you think about a training facility, and whether it's the Dayton Fire Training Facility or the ones that Aaron's using in New Jersey or whatever, we know the layout. After one time of going through it, we know the layout. We know where the fire sets are, those type of things. So, but if you think about it too, those are the times we get ourselves in trouble, because when the instructors try to change things up or make it more realistic, or hey, I'm going to make this hotter or whatever, that becomes a challenge for us, because we're trying to give the students something better, and we in the end up hurting ourselves or getting ourselves in trouble. So realism, no matter how we look at it, is going to be, I think, our biggest challenge when it comes to live fire training.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the simulating heat and things like that. I think the biggest thing that as an instructor, when I'm doing live fire training, I relay to the students, and of course there's different things you can do, whether it be smoke machines or a smudge pot with some wet straw or whatever. But I think the biggest gap, and we'll get into that gap a little bit later, maybe with some of the other questions, but the biggest gap is visibility. What it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, we can come close and simulate heat and things like that, and we get the evolutions down a moving hose. But just the simple fact that you can turn and oftentimes see the other people that you're operating in the immediate area with, that's just simulating that decrease in visibility is one of the biggest things. And you can say it until you're blue in the face. You can tell the students, hey, just so you know, you wouldn't be able to see so well in here if this were a real fire and things like that. But that visibility gap is certainly a big one, and I think one of the things that people are very surprised about it when they end up getting in their first fire after they get out of drill school or something along those lines.
Especially the case if you're using a propane-fired facility, right, because the minute you hit that propane button, your smoke burns off. So yeah, absolutely, the visibility is a big issue, and you think about it, there are places that's the only prop they have now, or the only thing, because of EPA regulations, etc., is that propane prop. And if we're burning the smoke away, we know that doesn't happen in a real fire. So yeah, and it's also hard to simulate things, like the modern fire conditions, vent limited conditions, all those different things in these facilities as well.
Yeah, you can change, you can open doors, you can open windows, you can do all kinds of things in most Class A facilities, and you're not going to get that. Although you might get some changes in effect as far as fire growth, it's certainly not going to be anywhere near that in the real world. Chief Halton, let's kick it to you for a bit. What are your thoughts on the realism issues in live fire training and some strategies you used in the past to overcome it?
Well, thank you, Brad, and some really good points, Brian and Aaron. When we talk about anything, especially a topic as broad as live fire training, it's always important that we context our remarks accurately so that people know in what regard we're talking. So when we talk about realism in particular, and Brian mentioned acquired structures, which are a whole other side of it. When we're talking about 1403, acquired structures versus, burn buildings. I think it's important when the realism issue is huge, but realism is interesting. Realism has to, when we talk about realism, that could be different for a lot of people. Where are we training? Let's start right off with the experience level of the instructor. Where was his experience level? What type of structures? What type of fires? What was the predominant experience that he had? That's what that they're going to attempt to recreate. That could be different depending upon the geographical location of that particular trainer, and that's okay, because the people he's training more than likely are going to continue to fight fires in that same geographical location. I don't know if that makes sense, if I'm coming across as well as you all did. I think we need to define the issue very carefully. If we're doing training in live fire for extinguishment, I think that the conditions can be radically different than if we're recreating an awareness level of what the visibility, etc., heat levels, etc., might be. I also think when we talk about something like live fire training, I think that you have to always keep what's the real issue, and then there's what level you're training at, so that determines what your goals are going to be, and then what actions you're going to take subsequent to recreate that experience or that training opportunity or that learning opportunity. And then there's a whole new set of dimensions I think we need to talk about, and that I've brought forward to the 1403 committee, about documenting the exposure, following up, understanding about core temperatures, the rehabilitation issues involved with 1403 that we need to address more thoroughly, some environmental concerns. And then I think as we go forward, I think we need to talk about advocacy, especially in live fire training, which is a big issue to me. I think realism is important, but also advocacy. And I think when I talk about advocacy for live fire training, I want to talk about the alternatives to the toxic and thermal insult that we're putting people through, which are detrimental to their overall health and wellness, and may or may not be necessary given our advances in technology. When we talk about things like ocular and some other modern tools that are coming online very quickly. One of the things that, unfortunately, when we deal with older people, especially people, I would say the worst crowd to deal with are the people between the ages of 28 and 45, because those rocket scientists know everything, and I hope I caught all of you. So the older people are in love with technology, and we love to see it growing and moving fast. I'm just teasing you, but it all depends on the individual. But with things like ocular and part of the problems and why we're not seeing some of the advances in simulated training for the fire services is because we're not demanding it as customers. We're not insisting on it. We're not being advocates for it, and we're not pushing it forward. So I think in live fire training, in the 1403 standard, and in any of our training standards, I think there can be a combination of simulation, using the simulated props that are absolutely 100% safe to get people to an awareness level or a basic muscle habit relationship of how to do a movement. Then there can be the introduction of maybe the propane, where you start to raise it up a little, and then it can be the actual, as Brian said, the live fire acquired structure, where we really create some pretty dynamic environments where people already need to have those I guess baby steps accomplished, if that makes sense to you in the big picture. That would be my biggest issue when we talk about live fire training, is that I have a tremendous fear that oftentimes the first fire we throw some people into are fires where we're trying to create maximum heat conditions, maximum visibility conditions, really putting them into the heart of the belly of the beast, where they haven't been, kind of taken through nursery school, first grade, grade school, high school. You know what I mean? That there hasn't been a progressive, and not in a political sense, but a progressive in the sense of the right use of the word, not to demean anybody's intelligence by saying we're going to go down some ideological path, but move them, through a system. So for me, when we talk about live fire training, it's that I think it becomes the goal at the end of the firefighter 1 class that now we're gonna bring you in the burn room and show you what it's like. Well, hang on, Sparky. You know what I mean? Let's do the dollhouse, and then let's do a propane, and then let's do that's where I struggle, and that's where I'm hoping the 1403 people put a little bit of guidance into the upcoming document. And remember, these are guidelines. Standards aren't laws unless you adopt them in your community, but they're guidelines that you can use to be sensible, to be reasonable, and to learn from others' experience. And sorry to ramble on, and us old people do that.
No, that's tremendous, and I really like what Chief was talking about. Somebody's giving me a little echo again. There we go. I think we got it.
It's Aaron.
There we go. We got it narrowed down. Anyway, but something that Chief Halton just brought up, and I really like, is the concept of doing it in stages, right? And you could even take this beyond just live fire training and really to fire dynamics education. Period. How fire works. Maybe even we've had some success around my area with starting very simple, just with candle experiments and changing ventilation conditions with candles. I mean, literally starting as small scale can be, and then progressing that into, the fire behavior box burns. I don't call them doll houses anymore since Bobby made fun of me one day. But the fire behavior box burns, and then going off into the flashover containers and all that kind of stuff. I really like that idea of building, starting as small scale can be, and moving on up from there. So that's definitely on the same page. Just a quick reminder, since we're halfway through, we are getting some questions coming in that we'll address here in a little bit. But as Chief Halton said earlier, remember hashtag FETalk on social media, and we'll address as many questions as we can. And also, Kaz, I think you had a few more comments to build on what Chief Halton was talking about.
Yeah, and you kind of started to touch on it. I like to refer to it as the crawl, walk, run method of training. And we've done exactly what you're talking about, Brad. And I have to thank my friend Drew Smith in Prospect Heights, Illinois, because he's kind of the guy that gave me the original idea. But we start now with the candle. We move to what you're now calling the fire behavior box. And then their first experience in the training building, they don't pull hose. They don't worry about ventilation. They don't do any of that. They're observers. And then the next one is just all about pulling hose through the burn building. And then we add some search and rescue component to it. So by the time they're done with the recruit school, they've had 6 or 8 different burns. And then by the 8th burn or whatever, the last burn, it's a full-on scenario-based burn where we're doing coordinated fire attack, coordinated ventilation, and they can see all the bits and pieces of it come together. So I really think in everything we do, and Chief Halton started to talk about this, and then you kind of built on it, and I'll finish it off here, is that crawl, walk, run method of training is something we need to do with all of our folks. And I think we can do that with not just recruits, but also with our incumbent firefighters as well.
Aaron, I want to kick it back over to you, brother. What are your thoughts on some of the initial building block stages before you get to live fire training? Have you had any success with some of the smaller scale props?
Yeah, we haven't done a lot with the smaller scale props, and me personally, I haven't been teaching probie school in a long time. In fact, I have my first new probie that just came on the job this last week or two, and we're sending him out because we just don't have enough to run our own program anymore. But what we do, and my big thing is, with the training company, we do a lot of traveling. And when you're doing that, you don't know the experience level of these guys. So you're relying a lot on the authority having jurisdiction, so to speak, who has brought us in. So we have to use really, really due caution as to what we do with them. So I really do believe in crawl, walk, run. And that's in every skill, even if that's extrication skills or search or whatever we're going to do. We've got to see where their baseline is, and we have to build them up to that next level. So I agree with the simulations, and I agree with that type of thing. One of the things that we had a conversation about in this last trip, I was in Thibodaux, Louisiana, a couple weeks ago, and one of the conversations we had was in their burn building. We had done burns a year ago, and one of the conversations, they're a very mixed group. It's a 100% volunteer department, great group of firefighters and officers, but very young, very, very young. And one of the conversations was, are the fires appropriate that we're putting them into, that they were putting them into? And they were actually meeting with one of the manufacturers to install some props in their fixed facility. And that was one of the questions. What props are actually going to help them and are going to get the bang for their buck? And also now, years ago, you couldn't do a gas-fired system and also have Class A in that same building because your sensors got all screwed up and it just didn't work well. And to me, those systems, when it was just a gas building or just a Class A building, it threw out all other challenges. Where Billy Hobson works in Ocean County, they built the first natural gas facility in the state, and one of the only ones in the country that was all natural gas. And they ran into that same problem where it was just those props. We knew the layout, the whole 9 yards. Now with technology and talking with a few people that are in the business, the technology is there. So now we can put a gas prop in room A and we can burn Class A combustibles in room B. So I think that's going to change a little bit of what we do, and that allows us to ramp up the training as we go with our new, our probies. But also it changes the dynamics of how we can watch them as instructors. Years ago we didn't go into the burn building with a tick, and how the hell did we ever understand how they were actually stretching line or actually on the line with good positioning? We smoked it up, we did everything, and when the fire went out and everybody came out okay and the line moved pretty well, we assumed, unfortunately using that word, that it all worked. Now we have, again, as Bobby said, we're looking at technology. We can do things differently. So I think that's some of the things we look at. But I believe in crawl, walk, run. I really do. The only other thing, you guys had mentioned flashover cans. Flashover cans were the rage at one point, and I still find them to have great usefulness. We just have to control how we do it, because I've watched guys come out, even years ago at FDIC, when they were bringing their own helmets in, they were just doing it for the effect, and I got cooked. And everybody had that at one point. But today we know differently, and the flashover cans are a tremendous laboratory. They really are a tremendous laboratory to show the effects. So we just have to control ourselves in these things and control our students and use them for what they're meant to be and not read deeper into it.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that, Aaron. I think the flashover containers are one of the absolutely most critical tools. And the cool thing about something like that, it doesn't matter if you're a new rookie going through rookie school or if you're a guy with 25 years in. You send somebody into one of those flashover containers and they get to experience some of that stuff and see some of those things from a training perspective. Even senior guys on the job are usually coming out of there saying, "Wow, that's pretty cool stuff." So certainly something that's can have a price tag to it, but something that I've been trying to push in my area would be regionalization. Maybe a department getting together with a local community college or some type of a regional training organization. There are ways to figure out funding for that is what is absolutely a critical prop. I certainly agree with you on that. So one of the questions we got in on the FE Talk hashtag related to 1403, and of course that's what we kind of keep bouncing back and forth with 1403. So Kaz, I want to kick it to you for a little bit with a little bit more background on 1403, maybe some incidents that were notable in the development of 1403, and as that our FE Talk hashtag question brought up, your thoughts on where the standard needs to go. They're actually, ironically, the NFPA Technical Committee on 1403 is meeting as we speak. But what are your thoughts on the document and where it needs to go?
Well, let's start with the history of it. The history of 1403, why did it come about? It was Boulder, Colorado. Firefighters burning in a chicken coop lined with Celtex or, cardboard-based insulation, burning tires and fuel oil, right? Two firefighters killed in duty, and because of that, we ended up with the fire training standard. So, 1986, and now we're in 2016, so we're 30 years into the standard now. Many revisions, many changes. If you look at the latest and greatest standard, some of the things that were added were no dummies in firefighter gear or no training. Why? You look at Osceola, the lessons learned from that line of duty death of John Mickle and Dallas Begg. You look at Greenwood, Delaware, where the fuel oil was placed in the pump sprayer, garden sprayer, and used to atomize the fuel oil. You look at the 3 firefighters killed in Milford, Michigan. You look at Lairdsville. Lairdsville is, I think, a case study that every training officer needs to know because it proves the fact that you can be held criminally liable for your decisions as a training officer and as an instructor. And the assistant chief there went to jail over the live fire training death of that recruit that was killed on that second floor that evening when they basically stuck a couch on fire in the means of egress. So we see these things over and over again, and recently on the internet there's been a couple floating around YouTube videos I'm sure people have seen. We saw the fire department using a step van for live fire training. Well, think about where the fuel tank is on that step van. It's underneath, right? Where are you burning? You're burning on the floor. So are you going to cause yourself problems there? Not to mention is that a step van to me is just like the school bus in New Jersey. So then you look at the fire department that used the camper and the leaf blower to do wind-driven fire training. Just not a good idea. Would we make interior attack to an RV camper burning on the side of the road? Absolutely not. If this thing's driving down the road and catches on fire, we're not going to make interior attack into it. But we have people that have thought this is a good idea. And then they're testing wind-driven tactics, so they stick a leaf blower in there. We have to learn from those that have gone before us, and I'm a big proponent that we say never forget, but we have to truly mean never forget. We have to know why 1403 exists to learn from those that have truly gone before us in these, and we can't let it happen anymore. Where's the standard going to go? I don't know. I guess I have some reservations on where the standard's going to go because the only reason the standard is going to change is for safety, and I think we need to realize that. The reason the 1403 committee is changing things, and there's fantastic people on that committee, Eddie Buchanan, Dan Majikowski, Chris Hubbard, people that we work with. But we have to be able to embrace the change. I know one of the things they're looking at very, very heavily is MDF and particle board and OSB. And their effects in live fire training. Why are they looking at it? Because of the carcinogenic effects of it. It's not because necessarily of the burn rate or anything. They're looking at what the carcinogenic effects of the glues are on us. So they're doing things for our safety. They really truly are. But is that going to decrease realism? I don't know. And Steve Kerber and his folks, their next study is the fidelity of fire training burns. So we're going to have some more research to tell us, the difference in pallets and straw and the best way to get the most realistic burns. So, in a couple years we'll have that research to go off of. But the one thing I would recommend to everyone out there: don't try doing your own research. Let the professionals, let the engineers do the research and our own research. Even though it may sound like a good idea, we don't want to be Greenwood, Lairdsville, Milford, Michigan, Boulder, Colorado. Those that have had to learn, the hard way, unfortunately. And all I ask, never forget, and never forget means knowing why we've lost firefighters in live fire training before. So, back to you, Brad.
All right, excellent. And I'm gonna kick this over to Aaron here in a second because I really want to hear his thoughts on this as well. But the next place I kind of want to take this is, are we setting? And again, this is a common question in instructor circles and something that's certainly been a topic that's been approached before by a number of different instructors in different venues. But are we setting young firefighters, young recruits up for failure as it relates to 1403 compliant live fire events, specifically in specifically in fixed facilities with just a few pallets, but even extending into acquired structures when it comes to water application rates, and the fact that we've all probably been guilty of being that instructor that's whoa, easy kid, don't put that all the way out, I got to relight that kind of thing. And are we setting them up through repetition? And again, we talk about this a lot in the ISFSI Principles of Modern Fire Tech classes. When we are talking about the concept of training, are we setting them up for failure that a small amount of water that is effective in the training environment is going to be effective in the real world? And clearly that's not the case. So what are some strategies that we can take as instructors? I'll throw one out there. A large department in my area gives everybody their own room and contents fire, meaning from start to finish, all the way through charging in, putting the hose out, completely overhauling the room, and putting it all back together, as opposed to a go in, give a couple of quick shots of water on the ceiling, and then rotate the nozzle position around or something like that, to where they can at least, although not in truly realistic conditions, see that event from hitting the door to making the push to putting the fire completely out and overhauling it, and seeing that process in its entirety instead of just segmented. And so, Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we absolutely give them a false sense of security. You go to, I know the local academies here, it's a very minor amount of pallets that we could burn, or it's a gas simulator. It's so unrealistic. And one of the things Brian pointed out earlier was, they just feel it's simulation, so they're not getting low. They're not crawling the way they should. They may not be maneuvering a line the way they should, or protecting themselves in a hallway to make entry into a room around a door. All these things. And we can tell them it. We do, but it's not the real thing. And we can't get them completely real. I understand there's got to be parameters. But even the last thing Brian talked about is, listen, we're looking at taking away OSB potentially, or something. The glues are a factor. And the other thing, I grant you, the carcinogen issue is huge. We have such a huge percentage of firefighters dying of cancer, but we are at a point where how do you measure it, and how do you equal it out with realism? Because if all they're getting is concrete buildings or pre-engineered buildings and lack of realism, yet when we see what we're getting in real fires, it's a hell of a wake-up call the first time they stretch into something that's really rocking down a hallway out. And it's not going out with a couple short bursts. You can't pencil this thing. You have to flow the nozzle wide open. Maybe you need 2 lines to work your way down a hallway. And yes, potentially you're protecting the search team that's above. So I don't think we are. I think we do set them up for failure to a degree. We may be able to teach them their footwork and how to get the line out in front of them, how to search off a wall and protect the stairway. But the way we do it, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And I know the first fire I've had several young guys on, it was a serious wake-up call for them. And we were fortunate and unfortunate as young guys. We burned in acquireds, and they put us in positions that were probably too traumatic for today's world. You look at some of the classes like Rick George does, and you talk about, we don't want to traumatize our students before we get them in the field even. Mm-hmm. But we also don't want to coddle them to the point where they think they're tough firemen and they can stretch down the hallway, and now the real thing's coming out 3 doors, and it's not going to go out because we cool a couple sensors. Those bursts. I did it just this past week when we were down south. We were burning in a facility with Connex boxes, which I think are you go to Jimmy McCormick's place and you follow what he's showing on how to build an academy, and it's very realistic stuff he's doing. But even there, we did the same thing. We didn't want to put the whole fire out because then we wouldn't get through all the students we had to. And it's a false sense of security. There's no doubt about it. We have to find a way to equal it out as best we can.
Yeah, Aaron. Every time I hear the word penciling, I cringe. I just, you know what? I always I tell classes that all the time. Penciling, at least from my perspective, maybe there'd be some that would disagree. Penciling is an instructional technique. It is not an extinguishment technique, right? I think that's something that was taught originally years ago with the inception of some of the flashover containers and penciling. And oh man, that really gets me worked up sometimes when I hear that. That is the definition of setting somebody up for with a false sense of security. Chief Holton, let me kick it to you for a little bit. What are your thoughts on are we setting young firefighters up for potential failure if they default in a moment of panic? If they're going to default back to how they learned it in that initial training, is our initial training setting them up to fail at that moment of truth?
Wow. It would depend on the training, Brad. In other words, if the program was as Kaz described, with a crawl, walk, run, to where they were thoroughly enculturated and where they had good educational materials backing up, good physical training, led by competent people, I don't think so. The one thing that I'm very passionate about is, regardless of how well you're trained, and let's take some of the most highly trained people in the world, the U.S. Air Force PJs, the Army Rangers, the United States Navy SEALs, go through what is arguably some of the best training in the world. The one thing that all those programs do for 2 years, in most cases, after you come out, is assign somebody who's senior to you to be with you consistently, dynamically, interactively, every step of the way, so that you're not in that system until you're really ready to be in that system independently. We don't do, just because you went through a 26-week training program and we throw you out, that doesn't make you a firefighter. No disrespect. What makes you a firefighter is the ensuing years after that, where you continue your education. You combine some of that experience with some of the knowledge. You learn some of the nuances of the industry. And again, I think that, you know, to some of the things that Kaz said a really interesting thing about never forgetting and how important training was and learning from things. Again, the class that I mentioned at the opening of this meeting, I'm serious, go to FDIC.com and look at the workshop that Sean is putting on understanding human error. And it's not human error. It's not a class where you throw stones at people. It's understanding how systems, and we're talking about systems here, all of you guys are describing systems getting people ready for dynamically complex and dangerous work. If you're in this business and you're not signed up for that workshop, you're a poser. You're a poser. Because that's the most important workshop that's being given this year, bar none. Point to me. Second thing, what Kaz was saying, and I'll throw a caveat on Kaz's other comment because I love Kaz, don't stop doing research on your own, but never do research with live people, unless it's your wife, and that's between you and her. But don't stop doing research. I'll point out pointedly that we wouldn't be looking at transitional attack hadn't been for the brave efforts of a couple of firefighters in Colorado Springs who wrote the Sentinel article on it in Fire Engineering in 2006 about transitional attack that sparked the flame that's had everybody else looking at it from that point forward. And those two people are forgotten. They're absolutely forgotten. Go on fireengineering.com, search it, transitional attack. You'll pull up an article by a couple of cats who did the research on their own out of Colorado Springs. Do that kind of research. They didn't put any people in there, thank God. Don't do research with people unless they're college kids, because there's some things you can't get laboratory rats to do. So, but don't use real people. And I'm kidding. That's a joke. Don't use college kids either. But I think when we talk about, you know, their training letting them down, it's not their training's going to let them down. It's your system that's going to let them down. And if you don't care for and tend to your incoming firefighters in a more interactive and personal and serious way, and I mean managing your air. I think we should be packing up 50 feet from the door, because the toxic products of combustion now we know are well outside. So maybe it's 20 feet. You pick it. But masking up at the door, that's a fool's errand. That's a joke. You're out of your mind if you think you're doing the right thing there. Getting out of your gear and doffing your gear. There was a question about deconning our gear. We're really not sure right now about gross decon on scene. We're looking at it. Kenny Fent and Doug Owens and the good people from NIOSH are looking at those 3 methods. We'll have more data for you, possibly at FDIC. That's another important workshop to take. Gavin Horn, Denise Smith, Kenny Fent, Doug are all training on looking at the data that came out of the Illinois studies, and we'll have a better idea about what to do there. But getting out of your gear quickly, it's all part of it. It's all part of it, guys. It's not any one. Live fire training isn't going to get somebody ready to do the job. What it's going to get them ready for is to be able to ask the right questions. There was once the stupidest poster, and I actually know the guy who did it, and I love him dearly. But it was the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life, where it said, during your training or your initial years, shut up and listen, shut up and do this. No, ask every question that pops into your head. Ask relentlessly. Question, as Thomas Jefferson said, question with boldness, even the existence of a God. For if there be one, be he more pleased with the homage of reason than blindfolded fear. Anyone who tells you to shut up just doesn't know what they're doing or talking about. Ask, 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 and ask again. I mean, any job that can kill you, you want to know everything you can for it. If somebody tells you, oh, here's a quick training tip, tell them, no, I don't want a quick training tip. I want in-depth training materials. I want to know everything I possibly can. A tip is just enough to get you killed. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic stuff, Chief. We got another question actually from our friend Bill Carey on the FE Talk hashtag. With regards to safety, live burn should have required medical screenings given the yearly number of on-duty deaths that occurred during training. Kaz, you want to tackle that one?
Absolutely, and Bill really hit the nail on the head. And Bill's doing some good work when it comes to analyzing live-duty death stats and the medical issue that we truly have out there in the fire service and what is killing us. And I'm getting a real bad echo all of a sudden. I'm not sure where it's coming from. But Bill's right. We need to require medical monitoring on the scene. We need to check our firefighters before they go in, and we need to check them when they come out. And and Brad, you know this from the ISFSI conference in Knoxville. There was several people that we limited and said that they couldn't participate with us. So we have to be strict about this.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'm getting that same feedback, Kaz. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
You know what's funny, guys, is I'm hearing feedback from me here, but I'm not hearing it from either of you guys. So I think we're okay.
Okay. Well, we're about 5 till the hour, so I think what we'll do maybe is go down the line and get everybody's final thoughts before we sign off here. So, Aaron Heller.
Okay, I'm unmuted. All right. Well, some of the things that we covered are, we can talk for hours, but the way I look at it is reality has to be a part of this. Anthony Correa had sent us a message about reality training in the medical side of things and simulation. They're using it. Of course, we're trying to. I'm getting lucky too. So that.
But you're coming across okay, Aaron. Keep going.
Cool. So anyway, we have to inject as much reality as we can, but with regards to the fact that we have to understand that we want these guys to still be healthy. We want them to be able to go on and work on their careers, and what we do in training shouldn't be getting people injured and killed. Years ago, Billy Hobson put together a hands-on class at FDIC, and if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6 years, and it was all about how to conduct live burn training in fixed facilities. So it really was a 1403 class based on fixed facilities. And what we found during that training was that there were a lot of instructors who didn't know exactly how to do it and didn't really go from there. So we were throwing them extra information that I think they really need. and we explained everything. Pernesti brought up how instructors' attitudes set them up for failure more so than the environment, and it's exactly true. A good instructor explains what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and how it's going to affect our students and firefighters down the end. And that's the type of thing that we have to get involved in. So for me, live fire training is invaluable. You have to find ways to get it done. You have to find ways to meet the standard, but you got to do it the best we can with it, because if we don't, we are going to leave guys totally unprepared for what. And that's not fair to the officers who be coming out fire, whether they're coming from Proby school or wherever.
All right, Kaz, let's go to you so we can finish up with Chief Alton. What are some final thoughts, brother?
The standard's there for a reason. Let's follow it, and let's see what the future research tells us. I'm going to go back to my never forget, and I'm going to go back to crawl, walk, run. I think that's the way we need to finish. Is we all need to do the crawl, walk, run method of training with whatever we do out there, whether it be teaching a new pump operator or teaching a new firefighter. Let's finish with that. So thanks for having me today.
Chief Alton, over to you. Some final words.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Kaz said, and I think I'd add to crawl, walk, run, and support. In other words, once we think they're at the stage to be able to run on their own, then we need to run with them for a while and make sure that they're right there. And I agree with Kaz. We need to analyze everything we possibly can from an experiential base and really learn from it, which is why I'm really pushing Sean's class, because he's really going to give you the building blocks to start your journey in learning how to do that, which might take years of study on your part, but well worth the effort if we're really serious about reducing line of duty deaths, if we're really serious about making the evolution of the fire service, happen more effectively and efficiently and more appropriately, then I think that we really need to understand not just the research that's been going on in fire dynamics, and not just the research that's been going on in building construction, but the research that's been going on in how the mind works and also how systems work. And really critical stuff, so live fire training, huge piece of what we do, incredibly important in terms of toxicity, environmental issues, heat stress issues, decon issues. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we need to wade through and figure out as we learn and as we grow and as we evolve as an industry and as a society. So I think that great conversation here today. I think someone said at the beginning, boy, we could talk for 3.5 days about live fire training, and I really appreciate the Instructor Society for bringing this forward, and I want to remind everybody that their meeting will be at FDIC this year. Please make it to the meeting, and please, if you're not a member of the society, please think about joining. It's an incredibly important organization. Congratulations to my good friend Kaz. I think he's well-deserved and going to do a lot of great things for society in his position. I think he's a wonderful human being. I've got a soft spot in my heart for him, so I actually love the guy, so don't hold that against me. I think he's a superhuman being, a brilliant man, and a great asset to the society, and we're so proud that he's there. And I'll see you all at FDIC.
All right, fantastic, Chief. Thank you. Anyways, thanks very much to Chief Alton for having us on, as always, on this hangout, this Humpday hangout. So, on behalf of my co-host Aaron Heller and our guests Brian Kazmierzak and Brian Ward, all four of which of us will be presenting at FDIC. So check us out at FDIC, either in pre-conference workshops or classroom sessions. Come check us out. We can't wait 48 days, and we'll see everybody in Indianapolis. So thanks again, Chief Alton, for having us, and everybody have a good rest of the afternoon.